Okay, so you all know what a variable is, right? Right. The variable is just some letter in algebra that we use to represent some number that we don't know or could represent a whole bunch of numbers, right? And we use it for convenience sake to put it in and model a situation, right? Like X or Y, or if you're in geometry, you do a lot of theta and alpha for angles and whatnot, okay? And then what do they talk about? Terms. Why is this not looking like the page I had? Because that's Unit 1, Lesson 2. That's why. Hang on. Lordy. Let's try this again. Share the correct screen. I'm not recording. They'd like us to evaluate this when x equals 3. So what do we do with that? Wherever there's an x, or x equals -3, we replace it with what?
-3.
So, right, we put it in there with parentheses like that. So 2 times -3 squared plus 3 times -3, right, minus 7. And a lot of these you'll be able to just kind of do in your head, right? Order of operation. You guys remember that? PEMDAS or whatever it is. So what gets done here first?
Parentheses.
Okay, so inside the parentheses really isn't any kind of thing to do, right? It's just a -3. There's no operation in there. So then we move on to what? The E, which is exponents. Okay. Now I want you to be careful here. What is -3 squared?
9.
+9, right? A lot of you guys will put that in your calculator and do -3 squared, and you'll get -9. Does anybody know why that would happen? Because you didn't use what?
Parentheses.
Right. So without these parentheses, the only thing that's getting squared would be the 3 and not that -1 that's in front of it, right? So if you want to square the whole thing, it's got to be in parentheses. So if we start step by step here, it'd be 2 times 9, right? And then 3 times -3 is what? Good, -9 minus 7, okay? Then we have 18, right? Do multiplication next. -9 minus 7. And what do we end up with?
2.
2. Okay? Now you notice how I'm working here, right? So algebra is a language, and I always treat it like a language, right? When you guys write an essay in English class or write sentences, you're encouraged to write complete sentences and paragraphs, right? So mathematics is really just a shorthand language. In fact, sometimes I think you should get a foreign language credit for learning algebra or algebra 2, right? We have subjects, we have verbs, we have direct objects, right? Like the equal sign would be a verb, wouldn't it? Is, right? It's almost like the story of X. And everything's connected with equal signs. Everybody see that? Working nice and vertically, and that's what your work should look like. All right. So in part C, what's the sum of this expression, the 2x squared plus 3x minus 7, with 5x squared minus 12x plus 2? So let's just write that down. Let's just write it as a sum, which means to add, right? So we'll do 2x squared plus 3x minus 7 plus. Do we need to add, put plus and then parentheses around that whole thing?
Well,
No, technic is a real, detailed technical matter. You should, but the only thing outside that parentheses, like to distribute through, would be a +1, right? So it doesn't make any difference. If you were subtracting it, you better use, minus and then parentheses. But we're just adding, so it'll work out the same. 5x squared minus 12x plus 2. And now we combine like terms. We know what like terms are, right? They're terms with the same variable with the same exponent, right? So let's start with 2x squared plus 5x squared. And by the way, the sign in front of the term goes with it. So how many x squareds do we have?
We have 7.
So 7x squared. Now let's go to the x terms. Plus 3x minus 12x. That negative goes with it. What's 3x minus 12x?
Negative 9x.
So minus 9x. And then we got our negative 7 plus 2, which is minus 5. All right? So most of you should be fairly comfortable doing that, right? Now, just combining like terms, all right? So then they define like terms. They're just 2 or more terms that have the same variable raised to the same powers, okay? And they can be combined. All right. So now I'm going to have you guys on your own, everyone take a minute, go down to exercise 2 and take a look at A here. They want you to simplify that, which means just combine like terms. And you should always start with the highest exponent, right? So proper algebraic polynomial starts with the highest exponent and then moves down, okay? So start with your x squared terms, combine like terms. So give you all a second, okay? So I want to see an equal sign and then the results of your work. We want to do that for now. We'll see how you do. All right, somebody want to tell me what they got for 2A? Just shout it out there.
5x squared minus 5 plus 15.
So 5x squared minus 5 plus 15. You're close. You are close. Is it 5x squared though? And by the way, if any of you jump in here and you're wrong, don't worry about it. All right, we'll just humiliate and ridicule you and tease you on social media, and that's okay. That's where true learning takes place, okay? So don't worry about it. Should it have been 5x squared? Maybe we have something different.
2x squared?
No. So we have negative 4x squared, right?
It's negative 5x squared.
Right, negative 5x squared, okay? And then what do we have after that? 2x
Negative 5x.
minus 5x, right? And then what? Plus 15, right? Okay, those negative signs are important, all right? I know it seems like a lot of kids, oh, it's negative 5, what's the difference? Just a little mark in front of it. Do you know how far you're off, though? Like if you say 5 and it's supposed to be negative 5, how far are you off? Who knows? Like the difference between 5 and negative 5. Figure your number line.
10?
You're off by 10, right? Kind of significant. All right, let's try the next one. Over there in B. Now we have some y's in there. So we're going to make sure we have the proper terms to combine. And by the way, real quick, what was I going to look at? X squared, X squared. Did everybody see this xy squared term?
Yeah.
Would that be the same as that term? Would those be like terms?
No.
Are you sure? Could I rewrite this guy here, this 8? Couldn't I just rewrite it like this? Wouldn't that mean the same thing? You guys follow me? Because you can multiply in any order, can't you? What's 3 times 5, guys? 15, right? What's 5 times 3? 15. So be on the lookout for stuff like that. All right, go ahead and simplify that. And somebody Tell me what you got. Don't be afraid to be wrong. Again, if you're wrong, we're just going to judge you harshly. No big deal. Don't be scared.
4, negative 4x to y.
You mean 4x squared. Okay. Yeah, negative 4x squared y. Go ahead.
6y to x.
You y squared, right?
Y squared.
Yeah.
X.
I'm going to write it like this. If you don't mind. Same thing, right? All right, go ahead.
Plus 4.
Plus 4. Everybody good? Does anybody have a question on that? Okay. Because you can kind of rewrite this one so it looks the same as that. They are like terms. Okay. All right, down below that, here are some properties. I think these still teach them in algebra. The commutative property, the associative property, and the distributive property. Commutative, what's the root word of commutative? Commute, right? What does it mean to commute? Move around, right? So we have a commutative property of addition and multiplication. And we just saw that that last example, right? A plus B is the same as B plus A. And what we just looked at in that one example, A times B being the same as B times A. We can move them around. It's a commutative property of addition or multiplication. The associative property, right? That just means that if you're working with like all addition or subtraction or all multiplication, right? You can group the operations in any grouping that you like, as long as they're all being, added, okay? So for example, if I group up A plus B and then add C, right, with a grouping symbol, that's really the same as A plus grouping B plus C, okay? It's like in the cafeteria. It's like, maybe you're moving to a different lunch table. It doesn't change the number of kids in the room, does it? Okay, you just group differently. And the same with multiplication. If it's all multiplication, I can group it any way I like, okay? So that's the associative property. The next one, I don't think it gets enough credit. The distributive property, probably the most important property in all of algebra, right? Distributing, like through parentheses, okay? And we all know what this little symbol here means, right? Plus or minus, just a shorthand way instead of having to write it all out again with a subtraction sign, okay? So C times this quantity, A plus or minus B. Remember, we just distribute the C through there, right? And we get CA plus or minus CB. And we can do the same thing with division, right? You might not have seen it quite like this. But if we're dividing that whole thing by C, we can divide each of them individually. It's almost like distributing that 1 over C. So this one is actually really to make it look like this guy over here. It's not different. Dividing by C, wouldn't you agree it's the same as multiplying by 1 over C? Right? And then doesn't it now look the same as that first example when we distribute through? Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so that's our first, that was a short little lesson there. Unit 1, lesson 1. You have the assignment that goes with it, so that'll be one of the ones that we do today. Does anybody have any questions on this before we move on to the next one? Okay.